of the Chicanx Latinx STEM series. And let me, thank you for hitting record, Lily. So we will be recording today's event so that for folks who weren't able to join us today can still follow through with the information that y'all will be talking about today, and it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel. But I want to thank you all for joining us today for the very first workshop of the series, Surviving and Thriving in STEM at SJSU. And we're very honored to have Dr. Jessica Castillo Vardaro, who's going to be facilitating the upcoming workshops. And, Dr. Castillo Vardaro is a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences, and we have the honor to have her facilitate these conversations. And I encourage folks who are not in STEM, there's a lot of information that can be transferable to your majors. And I do want to invite you to come to our next upcoming workshops. There's going to be a workshop every for the rest of the semester, once a month. So the upcoming one will be October 21st, same time, same day, Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. And it's going to be on breaking down barriers among faculty and students. And all of this information, I will share this on our link tree and how you can access this information very shortly. But other than that, I will pass it on to Dr. Castillo Vardaro. I know we're limited on our time, so thank you very much for being with us today.
All right, I believe you can hear me and see my screen. Yes, great. So hola, welcome everyone to the first event in our Chicanx Latinx STEM series. I'm Dr. Jessica Castillo Vardaro. I'm a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology in the biological sciences department. So this evening we prepared a panel of students and alumni from various departments and majors. So they've graciously volunteered to share their experiences with you and engage in a conversation with us. So before we begin, I'd like to give just a brief overview of the STEM series program, so what we'll be doing throughout this semester. Then we will hear from each of our panelists as they introduce themselves. We will have a short discussion and then open it up to Q&A. So following the Q&A, we will have a short reflection and finally close this event together. So this event is the first in a series of conversations, workshops, and community building events designed to uncover the hidden curriculum behind a STEM education, demystify the academic experience, and help you succeed as a STEM major at SJSU. So as members of the Latinx and other underrepresented communities, we are often the first in our families to forge this path. So let's make sure that we don't have to do it alone. So while I am leading this series, I'm not doing it alone. We rarely ever do things on our own. So this is a collaboration among the Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center, the SACNAS at SJSU Student Org, and myself. So I wanted to extend a huge thank you to Lily and Elisa at the Centro for helping make this series happen. They motivate me and keep me on task, and they've done a lot of the logistical work. So thank you to them. The SACNAS at SJSU Student Org is an inclusive group dedicated to fostering success and community here at SJSU. Anyone can join the group, and you can find out more by filling out this form. You can also follow the group on Instagram, so I highly recommend you check them out. So as I mentioned, this is our first event of the year. Our next event is breaking down barriers among faculty and students. So instead of a student panel, we will have faculty from various departments on campus. Let me see, I have a link to share. In the chat. All right. So between now and then, I'm asking students, what is one thing you always wanted to ask your professors, but were too afraid to ask? So there's a link in the chat. And so these questions are going to be anonymous. I'll also post this link with the Centro on the link tree. So we will answer some of these questions in our next panel. And I've already gotten quite a few good ones this week, so I'm very excited about that. Then in November, we will have a workshop on how to get involved in research on campus, why you might want to get involved in research, and how to do that. And then our final event of the semester, we will hear from people outside of SJSU sharing their personal journeys in STEM. And then we'll have another set of workshops and discussions in the spring semester. So tonight, our panelists are going to speak first. So please wait until the Q&A to ask your questions. If you think of questions and you don't want to forget them, you can post them in the chat and we will try to get to them during the Q&A. You can post to the whole group, or you can post to me or Elisa or Lily privately. So dialogue in the chat is in also an anonymous Google form. See if I can find that one. If you're wanting to ask questions but don't want to have your name attached to the question. They're two different colors, so hopefully you can tell the two Google Forms apart. Right, so if you have a question that you want to ask anonymously, and dialogue in the chat is encouraged. So I will try to pay attention to what's going on in there as well. So while we were in this space, we are making an agreement to our fellow participants. Some things to remember are what's said here stays here, what's learned here leaves, meaning don't go home to your friends and say so-and-so said this, but rather share what you learned from the experience. Take space and make space. So we sometimes have trouble making space for ourselves. So take space for yourself, but be mindful of other people and make room for others to participate as well. And finally, we interrogate concepts, not people. So I got this quote from a colleague at a meeting facilitated by Dr. Magdalena Barrera last week, and I really liked it. So if you disagree with something that's said, it's okay to push back on the idea, and we can do so without questioning individuals and their motives. All right, so we're ready to turn it over to our panelists. So we're going to go through each of you one by one. So in 2 to 3 minutes, max, please share your name and your current status, a little bit about yourself. Why did you choose your major here at SJSU? And then what is one thing you wish you had known when you were first starting out at SJSU as a STEM major? Or what advice would you give your former self? All right. So if we could highlight and pin our panelists. Do we have a volunteer to go first, or would you like me to choose someone? All right, Esperanza, I'm going to put you on the spot.
So hi everyone, I'm Esperanza. I am currently a PhD student at the University at Albany. My major when I was at San Jose State was biology, and I selected that out of 2 major reasons. 1, I love biology, and 2, I was good at biology and science throughout all of my high school career, so I thought it'd be a good fit. And an advice I would give my former self when I was at SJSU is that community is not found, but it's made.
Thank you. All right, Betrell.
Yeah, sure thing. So hello, everyone. My name is Betrell. I am currently a PhD student at Arizona State University, studying mostly like mosquitoes and malaria. So specifically looking at interactions between novel vector control methods and assessing, whether or not things like gene drive will actually work in the future. Going back to undergrad, I guess why I chose SJSU was I wanted to get away from San Diego. I didn't want to be around the same high school like peers. And it was a firm enough distance where I got to enjoy a new area, but I was still comfortable in California. And of course, the architecture there is extremely unique. You have the monuments that make you feel that historic vibe of the place and the institution. And then advice I'd give my former self is, being a bio major, I initially went into it thinking that was the only way to get to med school. And now I'm currently not even on that track, right? So keep your options open.
That's great advice. Thanks, Patrol. All right, how about Matthew?
Hi, my name's Matt. I'm a senior here at SJSU. Why did I pick SJSU? Because this is the school that accepted me. There's a little more to it than that. I was originally an engineering major. Let's see, what was the next one? It's name, status.
What advice would you give your former self when starting at SJSU? Or what is one thing that you wish you had known when you were first starting?
Do your homework even if you don't do it well.
That is very good advice. That's one thing that I didn't realize was a thing until rather recently. Where students feel like it's better to not turn anything at all in than to turn in something that's bad. And I think that's a really important misconception, because you could still get feedback and learn from that experience, and it's better to get partial credit than no credit. So yes, thank you for that. All right, we'll go with Janessa because she's next in my order on my screen.
Hi, I'm Janessa. I am a senior physics major, so I'll be graduating this spring, and I'm currently in the process of starting to apply to graduate school, where I hope to study astrophysics, so that's really exciting. Just recently, I finished this summer doing research at Caltech, where I was working a lot on different galaxy types, and now I'm working with Dr. Romanowski on a project that will do a little bit of galaxy types and a little bit of stellar evolution. So I'm big on all the space stuff. And the reason why the reason why we chose our major? I think, so I chose physics because, aside from being a math and science kid my whole life, I just really love being able to understand how everything around me works. I just think it's so cool that we're able to explain all of that with math. So, and then something I wish I knew, this is kind of like obvious when you say it, but I wish I knew that everyone here wants you to succeed, because, being a first gen student, it's like really intimidating when you first come in, and I was convinced that I didn't belong here, but your professors don't want you to fail. The faculty here don't want you to fail. So I think once you get out of that mindset, it's a lot easier to feel like you belong. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Marietta?
Hi, my name is Marietta. I'm a senior studying computer science. And I chose my major because, similar to Janessa, I was really into math growing up. I really liked it, and all things logic and problem solving. So it used to get recommended to me a lot, like, oh, like computer science. So I tried it out, and I was like, oh, I love this. So that's why I decided to study it, and it excites me to think of, like, there's so much potential. There's so much we can solve using technology, and to be able to be part of that solution is like amazing to me. And I've come into like one interest of mine as well as psychology. And something I've learned throughout college is like, you don't have to be pigeonholed into like what you studied. Like you can use what you studied as a springboard to go study something else and like merge your interests into the career that you want. And something that advice I'd give my freshman self would be to lean in completely to the full experience, because there are a lot of like resources and experiences at college that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so you might not realize that until it's too late. So just like everything you have access to, join all the clubs, join all the experiences. Like even like we have exercise, we have like kayaking and like rock climbing. We have just like so many things that we have access to at the school that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. So I'd really just tell myself like, hey, this is amazing, take advantage of it and have fun with it, go with the flow.
Yeah, that's great advice. I miss being able to do Pilates and yoga every week for free as a student. All right. Well, thank you all very much for sharing with us. So my first question for the panel is, what was the greatest challenge that you faced as a STEM major at SJSU? How did you manage it? And would you approach it differently now that you have a little more experience? So I'm not going to call on people for this one. I'll let you think about it and then volunteer your answers.
I can go. Oh, I'll go. Okay. So my freshman year, I was working, not full time, but I was working a lot of hours while I was taking my intro level physics classes. And it's really hard to, balance work and school. And I just convinced myself that I was like, well, I took AP physics in high school. I know what I'm doing. I did not. And I actually barely passed the class, and I ended up on major probation, which isn't like regular probation. It's just like probation of being kicked out of your major specifically. And so that was a big challenge for me ending up on that. And what I wish I would have done differently is, take advantage of going to office hours and taking advantage of all the tutoring services that we have here and SI sessions. And that's what I did. My sophomore year, I went to tutoring for like all of my STEM classes. I went to office hours. I did all the SI sessions, and the next year I ended up ending with like straight A's. So that was a big. I overcame that major probation, so that was really big for me, and it can be really hard for sure when you end up on major probation like that, because I was like, oh, I guess maybe this isn't for me. But yeah, if you take advantage of everything all the resources that they have to offer here, that there is no way that you're going to fail, and yeah.
Thank you. I think that's such a common story, a common theme in our STEM majors, where students come in and they don't really know how to study. They don't really know how to take advantage of what's available, and then they don't do very well and think, well, I guess I'm not cut out for this major, and they change majors. So that's one of the reasons why we're holding these conversations, and so that people can see that it doesn't mean that you're not cut out for this major. It just means that maybe you need to shift the way you're studying, or get some other people to help you along the way. Esperanza?
Yeah, so one thing that I really struggled with, and this was, I think, all of my time at SJSU, was learning how to study and learning how to study effectively. And it's a lot of it is trial and error, and it's really hard, not to compare yourself to your other peers who, for some reason, the whole class is passing and you're not. But reaching out to professors, it was specifically Dr. Hill that I reached out to, and I'm like, I understand what you're saying in lecture, but once I get home and I start looking at my notes in the textbook, everything flies out the window, and it's not like the student that I am and the student that is on paper is not matching up. And being able to reach out with that specific professor really helped me out, because she was actually able to figure out, what were my strong suits and how I should study. So she gave me all these tips that I still use to this day. And if you're able to ask for help just once, even if it's very minuscule, it snowballs into something really, really good.
Yeah, thank you. And to go along with what you said and what Janessa said, I'm often asked for what advice would I give incoming undergrads, and I always say, go to office hours. And sure, I'm a faculty member, so I'm going to say that, but it's true. And when I was an undergrad, I didn't go until my senior year, and then I realized why did I wait 4 years to do this? It's so not only helpful, but I learned a lot about the process of science and what grad school is and what careers are open to me. Yeah, that's advice that I should have listened to when I was a freshman also. Latrell.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying I've had similar experiences to the ones Janessa and Esperanza outlined. So again, reiterating that it is something that it's okay if you're experiencing, you're not alone in that realm. But to, I guess, add to that, I would say one challenge I faced was realizing, I guess, senior year and of course, going through grad school applications, it's essential to start building up that resume in terms of getting that experience in whatever it is you want to do. And being, first year, second year, even third year students, you're in a prime position to, yes, take those classes, right? But also gain exposure through internships or just volunteering if that's it, and not taking on, that workload that comes with a career choice or something. But to make it like, you're involved, you're engaged, you're forward thinking, and, I guess you don't have your blinders distracting you, so to say, right? You're making those small steps to get to where you want to get. So that'd be my recommendation, just to incrementally put yourself in a position where you're gaining that experience to then decide whether or not that's a path you want to go down or choose something else.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I agree with what you said, Rachel, and kind of combining what you said and what Dr. Castillo just said. For me, being in tech was essential to kind of have internships before going to senior year, because you need to have experience to get a job, but you need a job to have experience with that kind of loop. And it can be I remember freshman, sophomore year applying to internships and things, it would not really work out. It just been a bunch, almost 100 applications, and I did not hear back from any of them. So that was one of the challenges I faced, not necessarily academic-wise, but just with everything else that comes with the major. And I realized it's very essential to have relationships to help you get your foot in the door. So whether that's talking to your professors and having them point you towards certain things and recommend you towards certain things, or for me, going to a career fairs and just having that recruiter put a name to the face, and them meeting you and going oh, I like this person. That just helps a lot more. And just, I think it's interesting tip, I guess, is I put my resume on Piazza, and I've actually gotten a number of recruiters reach out to me from there about internship opportunities. So I guess just put yourself out there as much as you can, and but it can be a challenge at first, because it just feels like your applications are going to a black hole. But the more relationships you have and you can leverage for others, it's very useful. And also, the more you talk to your professors, the better letters of recommendation you can get when you're applying to grad school or for references for jobs and stuff. So it's really essential.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you don't have a question about your courses, just go chat with your professors and say, hey, I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z. And so then when it's time for them to, or time for you to ask for letters of recommendation, they can be like, oh yeah, I know this student and their interests. And just to put Patrol on the spot, he walked into my office one day just to chat about lecture. And then 2 years later, he asked me for a letter of recommendation. And I said, of course, because, I felt like I knew him, and it was easy to write compared to some students who write you an email and say, hey, I took your class. Will you write me a letter of recommendation? It's okay, will you write me a personal statement so that I have some idea of why you're applying to this program or what you want to do? And so it's much easier, and you're going to get a much better letter if you just show up to office hours and start a conversation. And the other thing that I wanted to echo what Marietta said was, all the rejection. Rejection is just a common theme in what we do. I get constantly rejected, paper rejections, grant rejections. And I had a student that was feeling really kind of upset about getting a bunch of rejections for summer internships. And I just happened to know one of the coordinators for one of the programs, and they told me, unrelated to the student, that they had over 500 applications and they could only take 15 students. And so when I communicated that to him, he felt a lot better, because he had no idea that is what the situation is like. And so I guess the moral of that story is, don't take it personally. It's part of the game, and it's painful. You gotta, cry, get upset, but then move on because, you know, it happens. So thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, so the greatest problem that I faced is I have a mental illness. I have clinical depression and anxiety. And for a long time, I was very wary about any type of medications or anything because I was like, oh man, what's this going to do to me? And even in high school, I wasn't a great student and I didn't know it at the time, but it was just because I got so anxious when I had to do my assignments um, that I just like, I would just start to panic and it's totally irrational, but that's why it's an illness. Your brain's not functioning normally. So yeah, don't be afraid to like tell people that you've got that problem, you know, and don't be afraid to get on meds if that's what you need to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. The university has a lot of support, and I think a lot of students don't really know. You know, you can go to CAPS, the Counseling and Psychology Services. You can go to the AEC, and they will work with you and your professors to provide support for, you know, test taking and students help take notes. And there's all sorts of different services that are available. And yeah, they're there to help you. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Is there anything else anyone would like to add? All right, well, I guess we can segue to my last question and then circle back because this feeds off of what Matt shared with us. So my question was, how did you maintain and support your mental and physical health while here at SJSU?
I can answer that. Well, for the longest time, I kind of just like went with the motions of, you know, going to class, going to lab, study, go to the library, go home. And I realized that like I wasn't really putting much effort into anything else. And even just solely focusing on the classes was overwhelming. So the way that I slowly began, I guess, to really just take care of myself, but while also, you know, broadening my scope of what it is that I care and what it is that I'm very passionate about, was getting involved. And like I said, when we first started, is that community is not found and it's created. And I was, by the time that I had reached my sophomore year, the center had just opened up. So I went in on like their first or second day that they were open and just like anxiously just held my breath. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be here for 30 minutes and let's see what happens. And you know, from that single decision of being, you know, finding a space, and I at that time I didn't realize just how lucky I was to be at a university that now has physical spaces for its underrepresented students. Because in my current graduate school, there's nothing like that. So being able to actually have a physical space really helped me find people that I really clicked with, and eventually, you know, we started great friendships. It wasn't friendships, and it was a great study group there, and also allowing myself to be vulnerable while still on campus, because for I don't know why this is, but like most people, like they don't like to show their emotions while they're currently feeling them. And I will always say I'm like the biggest cheat on that, whether it's good or bad. So sometimes I would just allow myself to cry, even if like, you know, other people are just like, you know, what the hell's wrong with her? But that's just something that I allowed myself to do. And in doing that, not only was I able to, you know, be more vulnerable with the people who truly did care about me, but also allow myself, you know, to just take some time and actually feel what I'm going through, instead of allowing just school to suffocate me and just completely pull me in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hooray for the central. Would anyone else like to share? Vitrell?
Yeah, so I guess I can follow that up by saying one thing that I guess stood out to me thinking back has to be relationships. So I guess starting out, I ended up having long-term roommates that I met my first year, and we rode it out all the way into the last year when I kind of had my own place. But that consistency gave me I guess a safe space, you would say, a comfortable space to come back after classes or hard days, kind of vent, share the college experience with others in that safe environment. Likewise, I think I joined a lab towards the middle of my second year. So I was able to foster that relationship with not just the advisor, but also graduate students in that lab, right? To where if I had a bad day, working on science, so to say, I had other people to vent with and, try and come with other ideas regarding how to fix things or things of that nature. And then another thing that I found very helpful was just treating myself. So it didn't have to be anything, expensive, so to say, but I would make it a point to go, once a month or bi-weekly and, walk to get, food with a friend or just treat myself at night to, Domino's, which I think is around the corner if it's still there, something like that, right? To gratify those good tests or those good assignments. So make sure to always, I guess, cherish those small moments so that you can propel yourself.
Yeah, celebrate the small wins. It's great advice. And you reminded me of how, pre-COVID, when we were all on campus, we could just easily walk down the hall and be like, hey, will you grab coffee with me? And so now, it's a little bit more challenging to maintain those connections and like you were saying, Vitrell, just walk and grab a pizza. Janessa.
What I was going to say is actually a perfect going off of what you just said. So, things are a lot different now with being on Zoom and online, especially the last year, even though we're kind of back, this year, but not entirely. What I was going to say is I used to, when I would do my problem sets, that would take me a good 8 hours and I would be up all night working on them by myself. It's really hard to just my mental health was not okay. It was a lot of late nights, and it wasn't until we ended up going all online and people started making Discord channels for our classes, and everyone was just kind of getting on the voice chats and working on homework together, sharing our screens and everything. Homework became so much easier and more enjoyable, and so just going off of that whole community and finding people to you don't need to do your homework by yourself, and I used to just convince myself, I was like, oh, I don't need to interact with anyone, I just got to get my own stuff done and not worry about anyone else, but it's so much easier to bounce ideas off of other people instead of sitting there for an hour being like, I think this is it, but let me just make sure, and then you end up spiraling, reading through the entire section of a textbook, and then you realize you were right to begin with. And so, it's just easier doing work with other people. And I think a big workaround for not being able to, be in person is if someone hasn't already, I find that it's really common for people to make Discord channels for your classes. Maybe you start one and just tell everyone to join, because you're all there to help each other. No one's gonna, I don't know, there's no negatives to it. So I found that really helpful, and that's the only thing that got me through this past year. So
yeah, hopefully we'll take some of these new skills and things that we've learned over the last 2 years and carry them with us. Yeah, thanks. I was going to say something and I don't remember. Oh well. Did anyone else have anything to add? What about your physical health?
I used to take at least one fitness class at the gym once a week. I was kind of bummed when they stopped, when they didn't continue it, when they opened the rack.
Yeah, so I did that both as an undergrad and a grad student. I actually failed yoga and Pilates. Dr. Carter in the biology department made fun of me because I failed. I told him somehow I let it slip that I failed yoga. But because if you miss 2 classes, you fail. And, I was taking it for, my mental and physical health, and it was really helpful for that. So I was okay with not passing it.
I went, well, there were so much new buildings and new spaces opening up when I was in undergrad, but I started using the new rec center, and I would just go in there, like I was either stretching or just using the bicycle or doing some weights or just using the treadmill, but just going in there and listening to audiobooks or just watching reality shows while I'm doing that, just to ease my mind and think of something else that wasn't biology related.
I just wanted to say it's definitely been a big challenge to keep up with physical health in the past year. I mean, especially if you're not on campus or anything, you can't just walk over to the SRAC, and it wasn't even open for a while. But I think something I mean, it's not as intense as going and doing a full workout, but sometimes it just helps to like stand up, because I'll find that I'm sitting in my chair at my desk for hours. Just like stand up, walk to the kitchen, cook something, or before COVID, my friends and I used to just kind of go for a walk around campus for a little while to take a break from doing work, just to walk. Your back will thank you. But yeah, that's all I got. Yeah.
I got a dog. He helps with the walks. All right. So,
In the first couple years, I did a lot of the group. They had group fitness classes. I do Zumba a lot, so I was like more on top of it, and then slowly stopped. So it comes in waves. Like there will be some times where I'm like, okay, yes, I'm gonna cook and eat well and do this, and then I get busier, and then I stop doing it. But then also, ironically enough, sometimes if I get too busy, then I'll procrastinate on my work by like cooking. So it just be like, but it definitely is just a whole yo-yo effect. But something now, you remind me of Janessa, sorry. I use a Pomodoro timer for when I do homework. And so when it's like, I've worked for 50 minutes and the 10-minute break, I make sure to stand up. So like at least that's time when I'm not sitting down. And that helps a lot to like, not only like keep me going and be energized through the study session, but also like you said, my back and like my overall health, just do a little stretch for about 10 minutes. So yeah.
yeah, great. So my last question, which Esperanza already kind of answered, was how were you able to find and or build community at SJSU? I guess Petrell also kind of touched on this too. Yeah, Matt?
So it's kind of silly, but I didn't really have a good community until this semester because when COVID hit, I needed something to do by myself. So I started model painting because one, I think it's nice to have a hobby that is totally independent from your major. I know a lot of people are like, I'm a computer science major, I'm gonna like program in my spare time or what have you. And I think it's really neat to just get completely away from that. And so when because I'm actually on campus, I have a lab and a class that are still in person. So there's actually a group of people on campus. There's a club that's for painting minis, and I've gotten involved with that. I also have gotten pretty good at painting minis.
Very cool. I have a good friend who does so also.
One thing beyond just using the center. It is also checking out the clubs. The clubs can be a very good thing if you put effort into them. I started with SOLIS, which is a society of Latino engineers and scientists. And from there, I went on and decided to take on a position. Then eventually I realized that we were still not servicing the more technical science people. Then I went on and decided to start a SACNES chapter, which is why there's one now. And that took me on this like huge whirlwind of getting involved and the overlap of social justice and science, and also going to seminars as well. That was also a really big plus for not only getting interaction with other students that have similar goals, but also getting your face and name out with other university and faculty members. And my favorite one, which is where I met Dr. Castillo, was going to this, I'm not sure if it's still happening now because of COVID, but pre-COVID, there used to be the student faculty dinner. And that is where I met Dr. Castillo, Dr. Wilkinson, and Dr. Grillo Hill. And that's what started like kind of like what is, I forgot what the word is. I keep forgetting words because I read too much, I think now. But but that kind of just like began my research career, and it's how I ended up now being a PhD student in New York, which is amazing because it was again that one small decision to go. And I wasn't gonna go, but my friend told me that one, there was free food, and two, she didn't want to go by herself. And of course, in college, you never want to do anything by yourself. So you either are the friend that's pulling the other, or being the friend that is being begged at to go. So sometimes your friends can be your greatest keys to success or your biggest distractions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Any other tips for, Vachal?
Yeah, sure thing. So I would say, I guess, building off of those relationships and friends, it's extremely, I guess, beneficial to network in those classes. So I know now some hybrid like format online, it's different than being in person. But in my experience, there were so many people that were in classes together as the semesters went on, just because it was like that cohort type vibe, where once you had that, not necessarily a relationship, right? But if you knew each other, if there was some acquaintance, it was easy to then see each other at the library, connect, be in the hallways, worried about, scrambling to get homework together or some lab, connect. And that just builds, right? Like then maybe someone's going to a sporting event, or, maybe there's some extracurricular activity you get invited to, things like that. So you don't have to start way outside of your realm, your focus. You can also find those relationships in what you normally do in a given routine, right? So it's just looking for that and being open to, I guess, make those new connections.
I agree with that. Some of my closest friends today are friends that I've made in classes. So you really bond through that suffering together. So whether it's just like when you're like, oh, how was that homework for you? Brutal? Yeah, same. And you just kind of talk through it and then talk some more. And eventually it's like, oh, why don't you do homework together? And then it snowballs into something useful. And then I found a little group and we took like a lot of classes together and had that like just moving support system for a lot. And that I think it played a big role in like getting me to where I am today, like because it helps keep you going. It helps like whenever you're like, I'm tired, I want to give up, they're like, go, and just like, yes, like when you study together, it can be distracting, but those distractions help you keep going for longer. So it's a good balance, and it's overall just one of the most helpful things in getting through this major. I think college in general is having a really good support system. I think especially if you have friends in the major that know exactly what you're going through, and you can like support each other and talk through things and think just everything. It's just so useful.
Yeah, as a chemist, I can tell you that in terms of strength of bonds, You got covalent bonds, ionic bonds, and the strongest of all, shared suffering.
That's fantastic.
I can definitely say that shared suffering is what brought Vitrell and I to be in so many classes there. Because if you ask any biology major, the hardest course that they'll ever take is 100 W, because it's right at your midpoint where you're no longer in lower division and you're starting your upper division course. And that transition just kind of just smacks the air out of your lungs. And sometimes you would just be like, did that really just happen?
All right, well, I would like to invite anyone to ask questions of our panelists, or panelists if you want to ask questions of each other. Also, I'll open it up for the next few minutes. You have a discussion. You can raise your hand, you can write your question in the chat. So I guess while people are thinking about this, my other question was, what is one thing? Oh, Elisa has a question in the chat. Do you want to ask your question?
Sure. So for those of you who applied to graduate school, I'm curious to know, what advice do you have for other students who want to apply to graduate school, and specifically for those who might be applying while being current students?
There's two of us, right? Vitrell and I. I guess the biggest thing that I would really advise for students interested or merely just the thought of graduate school is to first look at what you want your end goal to be, because your end goal really determines what programs you should be applying to. Like for me personally, my goal was to one day run my own lab. In order to run my own lab, that means I need to get a PhD, and depending on whether I want a lab in industry or in academia, then I would have to get a postdoc for either of those. So knowing that just my end goal, then I was able to figure that out. So just really mapping out your end goal, what your interests are, who professors that really know you, that can show different sides of you on paper, and also being very honest and straightforward with the graduate admissions, because if once you're honest, they can sense that authenticity and how genuine you are. And that personally led me in getting a letter of recommendation from the distinguished faculty member here at my current university that led me to a fellowship. So again, like, it's always about being very genuine and very authentic with others and with yourself.
Yeah, no, I would echo everything Esperanza said. I guess in addition, I'm not quite sure, I guess it depends where you are in the process, right? But I found it very beneficial to begin by casting a wider net. So for me, that looked like literally researching anyone who did mosquito research, right? And then slowly thinning that through. And, during that process, you find people who maybe you speak and have a phone interview, right? And that connection is just not there. Or maybe you get invited out and you visit the campus and things just don't click. But doing all of that, I guess, before committing, paying application fees, or double checking to make sure they don't have fee waivers to get you out of that, right? I think doing your homework, having a broad net outside of places like California where everyone wants to come to, will make it a more promising process, right? Just because there's more pull factors, right? So let's say you took that chance and applied to that school in Kansas. there's more that they may be willing to offer you, a student from Silicon Valley, right, than if you were to apply down the street in Berkeley. Another piece of advice, I guess, would just be to believe in yourself, right? So you will encounter people who, I guess, for lack of better words, will try and convince you to take a different route, whether that be going master's instead of PhD, or working first instead of going for a master's or a grad school in general. And it just helps to have that personal conviction that you know what you're, able to do, and you know that, whatever it is that you commit to, you will follow through with it to keep you on track.
Yeah, thanks. I think those are great. That's great advice. I wanted to add a little to what Esperanza was saying, in that, it's important to know what your end goal is for a number of reasons, but it's also important to know that it's okay to change your mind. You could get halfway through a PhD and decide that it's not really what you want to do, and you might feel like it's a failure to drop out of your program, but it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's okay to finish with your PhD thinking that you're going to go into academia or this field, and then decide that you're going to go an entirely different direction. So absolutely, have a plan, but be okay with taking a detour or redrawing your map. Matt.
Along those same lines, just want to remind everybody that if you're not planning on applying to grad school, your GPA doesn't matter. No one cares. Just pass your classes.
That is also true. All right, so I'd like to ask our guests to, if they feel comfortable, to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. I know we have a couple of guests. We have Melissa. Who else do we have? If you feel comfortable unmuting yourself or showing yourself and joining us in our conversation. Ariana.
Hi, so I'm Melissa. I'm actually graduating this semester, biosystems physiology concentration. I kind of just want to join this because kind of what Esperanza said, communities made. So here I am.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, for being here with us. All right, well, the last piece I wanted to do with the few minutes we had left was to do, I guess we kind of just did, so like a mini conocimiento, so, going around and sharing with each other. If we haven't already introduce ourselves, and then what is one thing that you have taken away from this experience, or one thing that you have learned from hearing your peers and colleagues over the last hour. So this is open to anyone, even Lily can share. I'll put Lily on the spot.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lily Pinedo Ganga, and I serve as the program director of the Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your experiences, your successes. It's always a pleasure to hear how unique each of your stories is, which I think is really important, because I think many of our students oftentimes think there's a right linear way of getting through your discipline. And achieving, whether it's graduate school or that perfect job right after undergrad, which we all know, even given your own experiences that you shared today, there's no such thing, right, as the perfect linear path to get to where you are today. So, really for those that are joining us today and who will be watching the recording later, I think it's an important lesson, because I think there's a lot of pressure to be this cookie cutter perfect person, especially in your field in STEM. There's so much competition out there. And so it's very easy to lose focus of what matters the most, really the reason why, you know, Esperanza, going off of your theme of conocimiento en familia and community, you know, why you're here to serve, you know, a greater good. And so not to lose focus of that in light of you going through maybe some barriers or some challenges as you go through grad school or your first career. So just want to, you know, thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories. And I'm hoping that we can continue staying connected as we continue to engage our students who come to the Centro, for example, who are looking for different opportunities to get connected. Or oftentimes what we hear is our students wanting to drop out of the field and going to a different major, which is something very common. So you all are a testament to that it's possible. And staying connected is really important. So thank you to all of you for being here today.
One thing that I always say is that the first rule of college is don't let it intimidate you. Because I've met so many people that were like, oh, I wanted to be a, you know, blank major, but I'm not good enough. And it's like, you're not, you know, show up, put in the work. They say 80% is showing up. And I found that to be true, even in college. You know, you show up, you do the work, you pass the class. That's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, obviously there's a little bit more, but not a whole lot. But yeah, so if you let it intimidate you, then, you know, it's like we're all STEM majors here. If someone was like, oh, I couldn't be a STEM major because I'm bad at math. No, practice, you'll get better.
Yeah, definitely. I wish someone had told me that when I was an undergrad. Not to be intimidated. I feel like I was intimidated by everyone. All right. Well, I think that, you know, Lily really summed it up beautifully. You know, thank you so much for being in this space with us and sharing your experience with us. You know, I'm very excited about what we're doing here. The community, as Marcos Pizarro said yesterday, our community of cariño. Yeah, so that's what it's all about. So thank you all very much for being here. And with that, I'll let anyone share, you know, last word or 2 words about, you know, what the space meant to you. And then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, no, so I can hop in and just say, I will definitely take some of this advice in terms of, you know, being active in the community again, right? So for me, that's going to look like going out to some clubs, even though, you know, I've moved on from undergrad, I should still be as engaged as I was. And then one thing I also do want to state, I guess, is if anyone here or via recording does want to reach out and have some sort of guidance or just ask questions, I'm definitely more than willing to help answer those. So you can either reach out to me directly, or I know Dr. Castillo Vardaro has my contact info, and it's a pleasure.
Yeah, and that's a really great point about you can get involved at any stage. I first got involved in the SACNAS student chapter as a postdoc when I wasn't even a student. So it's never too late to get involved in a student group. All right, well, thanks everyone. Oh, Matt.
Oh yeah, like it's never too late to be the person you want to be. But the main thing that I was going to take away from this is it's kind of nice to know that I'm not the only person who's struggled, because you know, it's when you're in your room and you're doing your homework and you're just grinding against it and you're not getting anywhere, you feel like everyone else in the class is just like, oh yeah, I did that homework, no problem, it took me 8 minutes, you know, and it's like, not even 10, geez. So it's nice to know that I'm not the only person that was spinning my wheels at some point.
Yeah, we're all in it together.
I just wanted to, you know, share with folks that for those of you who do want to connect with Dr. Castillo Vardaro, she provides office hours at Centro, and it's a great opportunity to come by and, you know, talk to her and continue some of these conversations that were started today. And you can find this the Zoom link on our link tree. So it's link tr.ee/centro_SJSU, and I'll add it in the description for those of you joining us, in the recording afterwards. And her hours are Thursdays from 12 to 1 p.m. So I invite you all to come. Even if you're not a biology major, anyone can really, make use and, have a really great conversation with Dr. Castillo. There's a lot of information that, you can gain from this conversation. And thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time for being here. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us.